Hi, this is Dave McLaren. I am sitting in Leo Fender's laboratory in the heart of the CLF research factory here at 2548 Fender Avenue in the city of Fullerton, California. So this is sort of the famous place you've heard about. Leo still got a place that was on Fender Avenue. This is the place. The building, in fact, Leo, he developed all these buildings on this street. It was agriculture at the time. And he developed all these buildings that had these individual units. You know, had a little office front and a warehouse back, and a series of these buildings, which he was going to keep as income properties. So that way he could lease them out. But this particular building, this he kept for himself, for his own business. And this is where he moved his CLF research operation into. And again, CLF research is Clarence Leo Fender Research. And once this building was completed in 1975, he moved all his things in here. If you look at the benches, his lab equipment, some shop equipment, all his electronic supplies and so forth, his lab, everything moved into this building then in early, I believe, 1975. So the reason why I thought it would be fun to come in here is it lets you a little bit connect the dots here, because G&L is a brand that's, okay, it's 40 years old. We have our 40th anniversary models and 1980 to 2020. What happened before that? G&L didn't just pop out of a vacuum. CLF Research, really home of Leo Fender and George Fullerton at that point, these are the people that gave birth to the G&L brand from this facility. Prior to that, the first products that were made here were the Music Man Stingray and Sabre guitars and basses. In fact, those were the first products that were completely designed and manufactured here in the CLF research facility. And that lasted until 1980. And it's always people. People are always the problems in these things. We have camps, if you will, where Music Man was a separate company, and CLF Research, Leo Fender, had set this up as a factory now, which supplied Music Man. So you can imagine there's people tensions, and eventually Leo, had to pick a side. So he's going to go with the side that's the factory, that's his place. He's set everything up, and some of the things that he was working on next became the foundational things for the G&L brand. So things like the magnetic field design pickup, the saddle lock bridge, dual Fulcrum vibrato in particular. These were basically the next features, but now there was a different name on the headstock. So it's kind of an odd thing to explain, but how do we explain, how did we come about here? G&L didn't just pop out of a vacuum. The first thing that happened here was the design and manufacture of Music Man instruments. Now, before that, in the late 60s, Leo Fender had sort of moved out of the Fender company. He sold it in 1965 to CBS, and things started to change quite a bit, because as they'd expected it would. And Leo kind of realized, hey, I got to get my own place. Leo had been reporting to work, every day, because he was still under contract to support, because CBS, Fender, and at the time it was Fender, Rogers, Rose, they needed Leo's help to keep things going and so forth. So Leo would be right nearby. But Leo started a little business in January of 1966, and by that, called CLF Research, and by that summer, he had moved out to a building nearby here on Elm Street. And it was there that he continued serving his 5 years work with CBS, or I guess the remaining 4 years, if you will, to CBS Fender. And after that, started turning attention to other things. And of course, the first thing was his investment to help begin Music Man with the amplifiers. And then later on, after his non-compete agreement with CBS had expired, which really focused on guitars and basses, once that had expired, then this place was almost ready to come online. So the first things that were designed here were by Leo and George, and it was the We have a couple of oddities. I thought you'll dig that. First of all, what I've got here is the CLF 6768 prototype. If you remember that light blue CLF 69 Espada guitar with the split coils in there and the big swoopy control plate. Well, the technical development that Leo was working on in the late 60s, it was just housed in a Telecaster body because that was convenient, because he could just ask Fender R&D, hey, I need so many tele bodies or whatever the heck he needed. Usually like he'd need a body blank. He'd want it routed out but nothing on it. So that way he could route it here, or Ronnie Beers, his machinist here, who had also worked at the Fender company, Ronnie could route the stuff out. So this would have come from Fender R&D, the body, and then here this would have been routed out. And this is, again, you see the little split coils to eliminate the 60 cycle hum. We have a battery pack with 6 AA batteries. This is really cool. I think it's because they probably didn't want to use the transistor batteries by 1969, I'm guessing, concerned about availability. But the fact that he was going to put a preamp on board, he was addressing 60 cycle hum, and he had this elaborate bridge which pulls the string, and these little pieces down here are levered against the end grain of the wood. Complicated. It would have been quite difficult for Fender to manufacture. I'm sure if I was Fender manufacturing, I probably wouldn't want to deal with that. But he was proving his concept. But it took another 10 years for him to really get it dialed in the form of the saddle lock bridge. So that's this is maybe 1967 to 68. By 1969, they started putting this in the stylized body of the CLF 69 Espada. As a matter of fact, here's some tooling templates from that. This is also from 1969. This is a pick guard template, and this is a body template. And this was 1975 concept. We call this the CLF 75 G1 with these giant Alnico poles. Now remember what I mentioned about the magnetic field design being able to get more power without getting big spikes, if you will, right over the strings. Because what he was doing is he was experimenting with the outer limits here. It's like, well, I'm going to go bigger poles, and then we're going to have bigger poles, bigger poles, bigger poles. At what point did he really see the diminishing returns and go, okay, I can see I'm getting this additional magnetic field, magnetic energy, but it's compromised too much. This is where he was experimenting, but you could see sometimes technically he would hit a kind of a wall, and it might be a few years before he comes back and he figures it out. He's had some kind of breakthrough. This bridge, he'd clearly given up on his complicated means of trying to put the string energy directly into the end grain of the wood. He'd given up on that, and he had a string through body bridge. It did have a couple of posts that added extra gusto in there, and they go into brass inserts. It's cool, but you could see where he backed up from where he was, only because he figured out he couldn't get there from here yet. I have to say, it's a wonderful thing that I can come into Leo Fender's his laboratory in his office. I can sit in his chair, touch his benches. These are things that had been with him through his career. You know, if you think of all the hits, not just G&L hits, Music Man hits, Fender hits, all these things that were Leo's journey, all happened with these things that now rest here at the center of the CLF research building. But I'm fortunate to be able to have this place where I can go in here, I can sit in here, I can reflect. I guess I can sort of check myself. Do I feel like Leo would be proud? Or do I imagine him looking at me and saying, is that the best you could do? And I never want to feel that. So I like to come in here a lot and make sure that I'm feeling good about it. This is my barometer. Are we doing it right? If I can come in here and my heart says yes, then I feel good about it. And lately I feel great. I thought, hey, if we could come into the lab and I can share you a little bit of sort of like the the culture, sort of the soul, if you will, of this building and what we're all about here. I just thought that'd be great if I can make that happen. So hopefully that comes through okay on the video. Thank you all again.